Alrighty, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending our CAD Unit Basics webinar. My name is Stephen Dillard, and I'll be your host today. I'm also joined here by Devin Fowler, who is our co-host. Throughout today's session, if you do have any questions, feel free to go ahead and just drop a chat there to Devin. And at the end of the session, we'll be able to go through any of those questions that you do have, and we'll be able to answer them and get you guys situated. And hopefully everyone here will learn something today. So like I said, that Q&A will be at the end of the session, but you can go ahead and send those chats in throughout the session. That way, if you do have any questions, you don't have to remember them throughout the full length of our webinar here today, and you'll be able to get those answered as effectively as possible. So I'll go ahead and close out of this, and we'll go ahead and jump right into it. All right, so as many of you know, this is our CAD screen here. Of course, you get to it by opening up, and I'll jump back out here, by opening up your ARMS client, going to ARMS record system and selecting computer aided dispatch. Now, kind of one of the first tidbits to share with you today is you can also just hit the F1 key, which you can see the shortcut here off to the side, which is going to open up our CAD screen right here. Now, currently, you'll see that I do have a CAD incident pulled up, but I do not have any open calls or available units. So, of course, in order to effectively dispatch, you do need units to dispatch out to any calls that you take. So we'll go ahead and take a look at logging on units. So the first thing we're going to do is come on up here to Functions, and then drop down, and our very first option is going to be Log On, Log Off Units. We'll come over here and click on Log On Units. Now, again, kind of going back to those shortcuts, you also can hit the F2 key, and that'll bring up the Log On screen. So I'll go ahead and click on that. And when I do, it's going to bring up this Log On screen for me here. Now, there are going to be kind of two required fields as you log on a unit. The first one is going to be your shift. And then, of course, the second is going to be the actual units themselves here. Now, in addition to that, you can also go ahead and mark the initial location or where your unit is going to be logged on. So, of course, you can type it there into the common name. You can enter in the address, however it is that you want to do it there. So in this case here, I could select the department here. When I tab away from that, the address is going to autofill. I've got my unit here. If my unit is going to be in a vehicle, I can hit that vehicle drop down and select the vehicle that they'll be in today and mark any mileage. We won't necessarily use that vehicle today, so I'll just backspace that out. But now that I've got my shift, location, and unit selected, you'll notice that the logon clock actively updates up to the second there. So as soon as I hit next to add him to the shift and then hit save, it's going to print whatever the time on that clock was. Now, we can also go back to that screen. So once again, functions, log on, and then log on units, and log on multiple units at one time here. So we'll select our shift again. We'll pick another unit, hit next, and then we can even change the shift, the location, whatever it may be, and log on another unit here as well. So now we've got two units that we're logging on at the same time, and when we hit save, we'll see that they both populate and fill out there in our available units list after that refresh comes along. All right, so now we've got some units logged on. We'll go ahead and take a look at how to log those units off. So we'll go on up to Functions, Log On, Log Off Units, and that very next option is going to be to log off units. You'll see the shortcut for that is F3. So again, you could just hit that F3 key to bring up the log off screen. When I select it here, it's going to have the date and time already populated, so I can just select whichever units I'm logging off. If I want to log off all of them here, I can do that. And when I hit save, it'll go ahead and log those units out of CAD there for me. And then it'll, of course, create those logon incidents here in CAD. So here's where I logged on Devon. Here's where I logged on my next 2 units. And then here's where I logged off all of my units there. Now, you notice as I was clicking through those incidents, I was using our toolbar right here. Throughout today's session and our advanced CAD session, which will be coming up here in the upcoming weeks, we'll be taking a look at some of the features in this toolbar. So pretty self-explanatory. We've got next and previous to kind of index through and click through them one by one. You can even click this last button, which will take you automatically to the most recent CAD incident there in your system. That way it kind of keeps you from having to click next until you reach all the way to the bottom there. Coming along, you can hit find, and that turns some of these fields into search fields. So you can search for the date, the time, you can enter in the actual incident number right here if you have that on hand. If an officer, for instance, wants more information on a CAD record, they can give you that case report number and you can search for it right here. And the last searchable field is going to be that last name or business name of the reporting party. So you can actually type that in and hit the find button. So I'll hit cancel to back out of this. In just a minute here, we'll be looking at adding a CAD unit and modify, so we can kind of skip on past those. Of course, you just saw me use the cancel button. We can hit print to print out our active CAD incident that we have pulled up. And then kind of come through, we'll be taking a look at cancel names, vehicles, property, vehicle stop, incident set, and BOLO in this session and in our upcoming sessions here. So going back to our logons, of course, we just logged everyone off. So we do need to go back through and log on some more units again. So this time we'll go up to functions, drop down to log on, log off units, and then come on down to CAD Unit Maintenance here. So this is actually another way to log on units. Now it's going to bring up this screen. Of course, this field right here is going to contain all of my units in there. And then coming on down, you'll see that we've got a little bit more information on our units. You've got all of your available units, all of your department vehicles, but we'll go ahead and click this log on button right here in order to log on some units. So when I click that, it's going to open up this screen. If you notice, it does look kind of familiar compared to that previous logon screen. So we select our shift. We can enter in a location here. And then coming down, we can actually check the box next to any units that we want to log on. So we'll check those boxes. And now that we have them selected, we can go ahead and hit next. So now on this screen, we have the option to add in any additional officers there to the units that we've logged on. So for instance, I could select Devin Fowler's unit right here and also check the box for Stephen Dillard. And that's going to give me the option to select which unit to add Stephen Dillard to here. So now when I select that and tab out of it, you'll see that the CAD unit for Devin Fowler is also going to include the employee, Stephen Dillard. So situations where you might use this, maybe you've got an officer and a rookie or a trainee who is going to be riding with that officer. That way, instead of having to dispatch those 2 units individually throughout the whole day, you can go through and use them just as one unit with both employees added to it. And of course, that's going to be undone at the end of shift, so you don't have to go back through and change anything after that. But it does, again, keep you from having to dispatch those 2 employees separately throughout the day. So I'll go ahead and uncheck Stephen. We'll say that he's not riding there with Devin today, and just log on our 3 units right here. We'll go ahead and hit save on that. And that's going to go through and sign those 3 units into CAD, and we'll see all of that listed right here. Now, another way to add on a vehicle or even an officer to a unit is, again, with this CAD unit maintenance screen. I can select Devin's CAD unit, hit modify, and then I can come through here and actually click to add on another employee to Devin's unit here. Maybe I don't want to do that, so I hit cancel. I can hit modify again, and same thing with the vehicle here. I could add in a department vehicle, so maybe Devin started off his shift on foot patrol and then transitioned to a patrol car. We could add in that vehicle just by, again, double clicking and hitting save there. So now it's going to pop up and let me know I need to make sure it's set up correctly. But anyways, that way we can go in there and make those mid-shift changes without having to log the employee or the unit completely out of CAD and then back in. So go ahead and cancel out of that. Close CAD unit maintenance. So now we have got 3 units logged into CAD, but still no open calls. So we'll want to go ahead and start adding in some calls here. So we'll see there are actually going to be 2 different ways that we can add a call. So the first way is to just hit add here on our toolbar. Of course, that's nice and easy. It's going to bring up this fresh CAD incident screen that we can enter in any of our incident details on, or we can hit cancel on that. And you'll see if I hit commands that the shortcut to add an incident is actually just Control A. So if I close out of that, I can hit Control A, and that's going to open up and give me a fresh incident. So as a dispatcher, sometimes you want to enter in information as quickly and efficiently as possible. So those keyboard shortcuts are going to save you a lot of time to keep from having to reach over and use the mouse when your hands are already there on the keyboard. All right. So now I've got this CAD incident opened up here, and I can go ahead and start filling it out. So you can tab through these fields, or you can click on them individually. Now you'll see I can hit this drop down and select from this drop down list. I can even click on the headings to sort by those different categories, or with my cursor selected in that field, I can just start to type out whatever it is that I'm looking for and kind of go from there. So in this case, I want to enter in an aggravated assault, so I'll go ahead and click on that. And now that I've clicked on that, we'll see that this SOP button has popped up. We'll kind of come back around to that here in a second, but we'll go ahead and keep filling out our incident here. Now, I've added in this aggravated assault, and you'll notice that it automatically filled out my call timer and my priority here. So the call timer is, and there's our audio reminder to notify us that an SOP has been added. This call timer here is going to be how frequently you're reminded with that officer safety alert to check on your officer. So in this case, it's set out to 60 minutes. But of course, your administrators can go in and set that timer differently for each and every incident code that you've got there. The next thing we've got here is our priority. So that priority is going to determine the order in which your open calls are listed here in your open calls list. Every department has the option of sorting either with 5 being the top priority or 1 being the top priority, and then that scale is just going to be 1 through 5 there. All right, so now that we've got our incident code or our crime code in there, we can go ahead and continue on and put in our location. So of course in ARMS, common locations are often labeled here as common name. So once again, we can hit that drop down, or we can just type in whatever location it is we're going for and select it and hit enter there. Now, when I tab away, if you notice, we have another audio reminder there. This time it's going to be for officer safety notification and hazmat. And we'll actually see that that information has populated automatically here in my notes field. If I hover over it, it kind of prints the whole thing for me, or I can right click on it and select view to open it up in kind of a separate dialog box here. All right, now that I've got that incident code and my common name in there, I can go ahead and click save, and that's going to create my new CAD incident here. Now, if I created this incident in error and I don't need to actually do anything with it, I could hit cancel call to go ahead and actually close that call out. It'll mark it as canceled and just show that no units were ever dispatched to it there. But we'll go ahead and keep using this incident here and take a look at that SOP that was added. So if I come over here, I will see that I actually have the ability to click on where it says SOP. And when I do that, it's going to open up and give me a separate dialog window listing out the specific SOP for that crime code. And in fact, you'll see that that window is also labeled with that crime code. So you can have multiple SOPs open at the same time. So SOPs are great to use in all sorts of different circumstances. One way that they're commonly used is for very common crime codes there. So maybe it's a building unlock, vehicle stop, whatever it may be. You can have those SOPs listed out there. Another great situation would be something like a bomb threat. You could have an SOP listed in there on your bomb threat crime code. And that SOP may contain the script or the list of questions that you need to ask the caller, maybe the contact numbers of outside agencies that you need to reach out to and notify them of this threat. Whatever it may be. You know, some agencies have an SOP for every single crime code, and other agencies just kind of have SOPs for kind of those extraordinary crime codes or incident codes in there. So that's going to be one of those things that's completely up to your department on how you want to implement it, but it is certainly there for you to utilize as much as you want to. Go ahead and close out of this SOP. And we can take a look here at our officer safety. Now, like I said, that officer safety is going to automatically print here in the notes field. And indeed, if your officer is using ARMS Mobile to monitor the calls that they're dispatched on, they'll be able to see all of those notes with that officer safety information actually print there within CAD, or ARMS Mobile CAD, I should say. So that way, in addition to you notifying them of large dogs, contact information, hazardous material, whatever it may be, they can also see that directly on their screen for easy access and reference of that information. So I'll come back over here and point out that you can also click, for instance, on that hazmat information, or you can click on where it says common name to view the full history of that location. So by clicking on common name, that shows me every single CAD incident that's been dispatched to Parkwood Hall. So I've got an aggravated assault in there, burglary, simple assault, accidents are in here. Whatever it may be, I can kind of go through and take a look at any of those historical CAD incidents that have happened there. I can click the next tab here and look at any officer safety alerts. So that way, if maybe there are multiple officer safety alerts or it's a lengthy officer safety, I can see all of those listed out there. I can see the security matrix information for that location, which is going to be like the alarm company, maybe the phone number you need to call for access to that building, whatever the situation may be there. Photos and other media are pretty self-explanatory there. So you can have information like a blueprint, maybe photos of where the Knox box is. Of course, it's there for you to use however you want. And then lastly, that contact information, just like we saw in the notes section, we have the primary contact for that building also there. So I'll close out of that and point out that street, initial incident, and reporting party all have those reference files as well. So if I click on initial incident here, I can see every CAD unit or every CAD incident that has been in my system involving that aggravated assault code. So that way, maybe there's been a string of car burglaries, something like that. You can click on that initial incident and kind of scroll through those just for easy reference, maybe to see if they're all connected, whatever the situation may be. So I'll go ahead and close out of that. All right, so now that we've got our CAD incident created and entered in here, we'll want to go ahead and actually put an officer there on that call. So there's a couple of different ways we can do it. The first way is while we're still in modify mode, you can go through and actually enter in that unit's number there. Or even easier than that, you can just double click on that unit from your available units list, and that's going to automatically show them as dispatched. Now, once that unit radios back to let you know that they're en route, you can click on en route right there, and it will automatically fill in the current time. Same thing, if they say they've arrived, you can double click again on arrived, and that's going to fill that out as well. So say Devin arrives on scene and realizes he's going to need some backup here. We can go ahead and double click on C4, and that's going to add in Jason here. So now that Jason has been dispatched, we can individually mark his times en route, arrived, whatever it may be. So we'll show him as arrived. So they're both on scene. Any information that we are given by those officers, we can right click in the notes field and hit add. That'll actually give us a text box here. And we can go through and type out any information that we need to add. Or we also have the ability to add in names, vehicles, and property there that are associated to that incident. So for instance, we can click on names, and that's going to open up with this add names field. So we can search, and we'll go ahead and grab this individual here and hit save. Once we enter in the involvement type, and the name type there. Now, you'll notice ARMS wants to make sure that your data has as much integrity as possible. So part of that is going to be those required fields. So if you go to enter in something and all of the information isn't there, it will prompt you to go ahead and add in any missing information. I'll hit save on that. And so now that's going to associate Alvin Smith as a witness here to our case. And in fact, you'll also see that now a note has been added to record that. So we can right click and view that note there. And we'll also see that the circle next to names has now filled out with that green circle to let us know that there's a name associated. Now, as a dispatcher, you may be wondering why you would need to add in a name or a vehicle or something like that to a CAD incident when the officer can do it there on a case report. The reason for that is anything that you add to this CAD incident is going to automatically carry over to your case report. So when the officer is writing that case report, they're already going to have the location and address filled out. They'll already have a crime code in there. Alvin Smith will already be sitting there in involved parties, and then they'll be able to reference any of these notes in order to write their narrative or help fill out or remember anything from that incident there. So as much information as you can put on a CAD incident as possible, the easier it's going to be for your officer when they go to actually write their case report there. Same thing with vehicles here. We'll click on our vehicles and we'll just hit look up to see any vehicles that we've got. So I can double click on a vehicle to add them in here. Once I've got that vehicle added, I can fill out any other information. I can add notes, whatever it may be. Then when I hit save and close out of it, we'll see now there's that yellow circle next to vehicles, and that vehicle has now been associated to this event. So whenever I go to issue that case report, now vehicle 123 ABB and Alvin Smith are already going to be there on the case report waiting for the officer. All right, so now that we've kind of gone through our scene here, both officers have reported that the situation is clear and they are good to go. If you wanted to mark them both cleared at the same time, instead of double-clicking on the individual cell for an officer, you can actually just double-click on cleared right here, and it will print the same time throughout that whole column. Now, once your last officer leaves the scene, it is going to pop up and ask you to select a disposition for this incident here. So we can go through and select whatever disposition may be most accurate here. So in this case, we'll just say arrest made, double click that, and we're good to go. Now you'll see that both of my units are available again, and that incident has been cleared from the open calls list. So now that we've got all of that taken care of, we've got our dispatch times in here, we've got all of our notes in here. One of our officers radios in and asks for a report number for that incident. So now we can go through and click Issue Report. That's going to bring up this window right here. So you'll see that it has the occurred from and occurred to times already printed in there. So occurred from is going to be the moment that you clicked to add the CAD incident, and occurred to is going to be the time whenever you added that disposition to the CAD incident. So now it's going to give you the option to select between either of your units that were on that call, or you can even check this box right here and select any employee in your system to add to that call. But we'll go ahead and stick with Devin, who is the primary officer on the scene. And then going through, if any of these categories apply, whatever it may be, you can mark those as well. All right, once I hit save, that's going to go ahead and print the report number here in the report number field. It's also going to add a note showing the report number has been issued. It'll have your name as the dispatcher, and that officer is going to receive a notification about it. Now, one thing about issuing that report there, now that I've issued this report, I could go in and I could type 500 words into the notes field. I could add 3 more names and 10 more vehicles, but none of that is actually going to show up on the case report because that report has already been issued out there. So in order for the most information as possible to make it to your officer's case report, you'll want to make sure to go ahead and just hold off on issuing that report until you've completed entering in all information that you have available there on this incident here. Because otherwise it's just not going to import over. You'll have a lot of duplication of efforts there because now your officer is going to need to go through and manually add in any of those names or vehicles or whatever it may be to that incident here. All right, so now that we've gone through that, we can go ahead and log off our units here. So we'll go on up to Functions, go to Log On, Log Off Units, and this time we'll select Cad Unit Maintenance again. Now that I've selected that, we'll hit Log Off, and we can select our units for log off here. And then we'll hit Next. If any of them were driving vehicles, we would be prompted to enter in the vehicle mileage information for those units. And then when we hit Save, it's going to go ahead and log off those units. So we can close that out, come up to our toolbar and hit Last, and see that this end of shift record has been created for those 3 units there. All right, so that concludes everything we've got for this webinar here. We'll go ahead and open it up for Q&A. I'll bring up this PowerPoint again here. Going through this, well, let me set that up better for you. So going through here, you'll want to drop down and select participants. From there, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you, or you can put something there into the chat and we'll be able to read it off there. So we'll go ahead and open that up and see if anyone has any questions there.
And if you are typing a question into the chat, please type in the word question, just so that we know that you're typing, or type question and then send it to us just so we know that there's a question coming. And I did just get a message from my side that says, will you be sharing the recording of this session? Yes, all of our webinars from this week are going to be posted to our YouTube channel and at arms.com/webinars this Friday. And there will also be an email that gets sent out with links to each of them. All right, any other questions? All right, and we do have another question here. Each note added to the call is a right click and select? Question mark. We log all radio traffic. Has that been time consuming for the radio operators? I would say it depends on what kind of information you're trying to add in there. If you're talking about the notes field right there. So that is going to be for more private information that's being put into the system, and mainly just stuff that's going to be showing up for the police department only. And so for that, you can also add information to the public information, but whenever it comes to, if you're adding in any kind of talk that goes over the radio, then you may want to just add that to the notes. For the most part, though, we've never heard anything from any department where that's taken up time. And also, you can speed it up a little bit with clicking or with hitting Control-I. So some more keyboard enhancements, Control-I or Control, I think it's Control-I.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So you can hit Control-I and then immediately start typing. So you don't have to right-click to add that. Control-I will pop it up and they can add and then hit Enter to save it. Kind of keeping it all on the keyboard side. And that is a not added by hitting Control-I.
And of course, if you do make any spelling errors like that, you can hit Edit and come in there and fix that. All right, I've got a few questions coming through. Can you discuss the other tabs at the top, such as Incident Set and Bolo? We'll actually be covering that in our next CAD webinar, which Devin can pull up the dates there for that.
That is going to be exactly 2 weeks from now. So it's going to be September 24th at 1 p.m. Central. And those are on our calendar too. You can go to arms.com and go to the events page, and you can see all the webinars that we've got in the mix coming up.
And so kind of coming through some of the other questions I've got. How many dispatchers can work on the same call within the notes field? So as many as you've got logged on there, we'll be able to go in and kind of add notes at the same time there. So it's not going to stack on one another. It's just going to add them in the order that they were saved.
Yeah, so more than one dispatcher can't work on the same call within the other information, but for the notes section, that doesn't apply. Anyone can add as many notes there, even if someone's working on the call.
So I've got another question here. Can you describe the Notify Now button? So Devin, I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, so that Notify Now button is connected to Notification Manager. So if you have Notification Manager set up, and if you have users who are, subscribed to certain crime codes or location codes, that Notify Now button would send an immediate message to them. Normally it'll send once the call, I think it's whenever it's either cleared or dispatched. But if you hit Notify Now, then it will send out an alert, and you can hit it more than one time for the same CAD call. If it's dispatched and then en route, you can send another notification. So Notify Now just to send out another message for that.
All right. We've got another question here. How many different CAD screens can you have open at one time in the case of maybe multiple officers working different incidents? So you can only have one CAD screen open at a time, but you can open up multiple RMS screens for kind of master name searches or whatever it may be. So that way it does enable you to have some multitasking abilities there. Coming through some of the other questions, toggling between the different calls. If you do have multiple calls open there at the same time, they are going to show up there in the open calls list, so you can easily click between them in order to pull them up in your active incident fields up here. Or you can toggle through just by navigating using those next and previous buttons here.
And I think in the open calls list, you can also just hit the up and down arrow on the keyboard, and that'll go through them too.
Yep. Let's see, looks like another question here. Can the dispatcher change the call timer during the incident, or will it always be what the admin set it for? And Devin, I'm not totally familiar on the user access there. I know in this case, I do have the ability to go in and change that call timer.
Yeah, so dispatchers can go in and change that call timer based on their specific incident to either make it make the notifications pop up more or pop up less, depending on the severity of the call. But that will only change it for their call. In the future, if that same incident is used, then it's going to go back and use that same call timer that the admins have set it up with.
Yep. And then I thought I saw a hand pop up, but it looks like it was put back down. So if that was you and you still have a question there, of course, feel free to raise it back up.
Yep, and I've got a couple questions over here too. Hold on, let me read them before I read them out loud. So for, we have a question. If you have multi-dispatchers on, can one be entering data while one is dispatching on the same call? So say there is an incident and you are getting several calls, can one send officers while one is providing updated information? So as long as they have that call saved, if that call is saved into the system after they've added some information, then another person can add units and dispatch those units while the other one goes in and modifies and changes or adds information in there. And with CAD, you can easily just click add and save. You don't have to have any required information in there to add a call to the system. All right, and I've got another one in here. Yeah, and for anyone who may not be able to make it to the 24th for the other dispatcher training, that is going to be recorded too. All of the webinars that we do are recorded and an email sent out at the end of the week with links to that, or they can be found at arms.com/webinars. Okay, any other questions? I think that, I don't think we have any more questions. Stephen, we can go ahead and wrap it up.
All right. Well, that'll conclude our webinar here today. If you do think of any further questions after this session has concluded, you can reach out to us at support@arms.com, or you can give us a call at 1-800-776-6783, and one of our support agents will be able to help you out there. But in the meantime, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and thank you very much for attending.